The supreme leader of the party, State and Army, Kim Jong-un, chairman of the Workers' Party of Korea, chairman of the State Affairs Commission of the Democratic People's Republic of Korea, and supreme commander of the Korean People's Army, had a photo session with the active workers in the field of construction of the Korean People's Army. The moment he came out to the site of photo session, the entire participants warmly welcomed him, extending the greatest honor and the warmest thanks to him. Kim Jong-un warmly congratulated active workers in the field of construction of the Korean People's Army, creating multiple and consecutive miracles of construction of heroic Korea. He expressed a great satisfaction over the fact that they have built many monumental creations showing the future of the Juche-based architecture and the height of socialist civilization in the offensive spirit of Atagar, and thus dealt a heavy blow at the enemy trying to suffocate the DPRK, and demonstrated all over the world the inexhaustible national power and potentiality of development and daring spirit of socialist Korea. He had a photo session with the active workers in the field of construction of the Korean People's Army. Present on the occasion were Vice Marshal of the Korean People's Army Hwang Byung-seo, member of the Presidium of the Political Bureau of the Central Committee of the Workers' Party of Korea, Vice Chairman of the State Affairs Commission of the DPRK, and Director of the General Political Bureau of the Korean People's Army. General Park Yong-sik, Minister of the People's Armed Forces of the DPRK, Lieutenant General Kim Jong-kwan, Vice Minister of the People's Armed Forces, and other leading personnel of the Korean People's Army.
News alert with the Pentagon confirming right now North Korea has launched some kind of ballistic missile. They apparently test-fired it early Sunday morning from a province in the western part of the country. We are awaiting the Pentagon's response and assessment. We are also awaiting a response from the White House on all of this. This latest launch comes amid heightened tensions between the U.S. and Kim Jong-un after a series of failed launch attempts and President Trump's insistence that all options are on the table. But just today, a top North Korean diplomat said Pyongyang would be willing to engage in dialogue with the Trump administration if the conditions were right. Joining me with analysis on all of this, Gordon Chang, an expert on Asia and author of Nuclear Showdown, North Korea Takes on the World. Thank you very much for talking to us. Not the first time we've had to talk here under these sort of conditions, in that North Korea, once again, has test-fired another missile in the past. In fact, in the last month, you thought perhaps it was a failed launch that was being reported, but that you, in fact, thought that it was intentional for it to land on North Korea's soil so that the evidence wouldn't be accessible to others. What do you think happened here?
Well, 435 miles is a successful test. And I think what the North Koreans are doing is, by the timing of this launch, they are thinking that that is going to help them get these negotiations started. The one thing North Korea seems to want, because we've seen in the last 2 or 3 days a number of initiatives in this regard, they seem to want relief from sanctions. And, of course, President Trump is going the other way, wanting to put on tougher sanctions on North Korea. So this is coming to a head. And I think the missile launch was an attempt to try to get the Trump administration and Moon Jae-in, the new president of South Korea, to the bargaining table.
So you think that this was an intentional message, this test launch today was an intentional message to President Trump?
Yes, because, we didn't see a missile launch in the run-up to the South Korean elections. And the reason is that the candidate that North Korea wanted, Moon Jae-in, who eventually won, was leading. And I think that they wanted to prevent anything from happening that would derail his candidacy. Now that Moon Jae-in is actually president of South Korea, we know that Moon wants to start talks with North Korea. He also wants to provide aid to the North Koreans. And so I think the North Koreans right now think that this is a perfect time for them to really corral the international community, including the United States, get them to sit down and to do what North Korea wants.
In late April, the president, Donald Trump, had warned in an interview to Reuters that a, quote, major conflict with the North was possible, but that he would prefer a diplomatic outcome to the dispute over its nuclear and missile programs. And then we hear about this person from the region, from Pyongyang and that regime, saying that they would consider sitting down with the U.S. President Trump said he would if the conditions were right. What is all of this?
Well, I think all of this right now is really confusion on everyone's part.
Absolutely.
You have the administration right now consumed by the Comey crisis. The North Koreans see that, and I think that they believe that they can give President Trump an out to sort of give him headlines that he would prefer to have. Now, I think the North Koreans are timing this wrong, but nonetheless, that's the way they think. They think in ways which are very different than the ways we do, and so I think that's why sometimes they get themselves into trouble. But nonetheless, in their way of thinking, they believe this is a good time right now to put the U.S. on the back feet.
You have said to me in the past that President Trump has tried to coax the Chinese to help on North Korea, tried to flatter the Chinese President Xi Jinping, and he's ignored blatant Chinese support for Pyongyang. What do we do with China? What message do we send to them? And was our message that we sent to Syria strong enough to send a message to North Korea that we mean business?
Yeah, I think President Trump needs to give the Chinese a deadline. As you point out, they've flattered Xi Jinping, the Chinese ruler, and also President Trump has flattered Kim Jong-un last week with those messages about Kim being a smart cookie, that Trump would be honored to talk to the North Korean leader. So clearly this is an attempt, I think, to sort of at least establish a dialogue path. But, President Trump has said very clearly that if the Chinese don't help, that if the North Koreans don't disarm, that he will do this on his own and that the United States has the ability to do that. That's a threat, of course, and that's hanging over the heads of the North Koreans, who obviously want to prevent that eventuality. So I think that they're trying to see right now if they can actually sit down and talk. But, the Chinese always have wanted to talk. Now the South Koreans want to talk. President Trump is open to the idea of talking. And so it seems propitious, at least at this point, for negotiations.
Right.
I think negotiations are premature. You don't talk to the North Koreans until they know they're defeated. We're a long way from that.
It's interesting you mentioned South Korea with the first liberal president to be elected recently, and that president actually wanting to talk to North Korea. We haven't seen that. So you've got these three nations potentially in for talks. But, of course, that will take a lot of time and not having to see these sort of blatant disrespect slap in the face to the West as each time Pyongyang goes ahead and test fires another missile. Gordon Chang, of course, great to have you on, and we look forward to the next time. Not to a Pyongyang, obviously, launch, but to our interview.
Thank you.
Bruce, what does the general public need to know about this missile launch? Because I feel that we regularly hear in the news there's been another missile launch. Usually, it's been the case this year, they failed to varying degrees. There have been at least 9 under the presidency of Donald Trump, and it's sort of hard to understand where this is getting us exactly and where it's getting North Korea on the road to a nuclear weapon.
Well, I think we need to categorize between the North Korean developmental missiles and the ones that have already been deployed. The ones that have been deployed, which have a range already of South Korea and Japan, they've had a very high success rate. The ones that have been failing are the ones that are still early in their developmental stage. And just as early in the U.S. space launch and missile program, we had a lot of failures. So North Korea has been learning from even their failures. That said, they did have a successful submarine-launched ballistic missile launch last year, as well as the Musudan, which is a missile that can range Guam, a keynote in the defense of the Pacific.
What's the goal of North Korea at the moment as far as we can make out? It looked for a little while like they were bent on developing their nuclear and missile technology as much as possible. And now recently they've been saying they could, under the right conditions, be open to talks with Washington.
North Korea has no intention of abandoning their nuclear arsenal or the missile means to deliver it. They will do another nuclear test, and they certainly will test an ICBM sometime. We just don't know when. So they have missiles that can already threaten South Korea and Japan with nuclear weapons. They are still developing the submarine launch missile and a missile to hit Guam. And they're working on several variants of an ICBM, which eventually would be able to hit the United States with a nuclear weapon.
But are they trying to develop this technology to use as leverage in negotiations, or are they trying to use it because to develop this technology because they want this defense capability and they've got no intention of negotiating?
I think most analysts think that they're never going to give up their nuclear weapons through negotiations. They've been developing nuclear weapons and missiles since the 1960s. It's not a bargaining chip, it's a military capability. When Kim Jong-un came into power, he directed his military to come up with a new war plan so that if necessary, they could occupy the peninsula within 7 days. That would require them to go nuclear early on. That doesn't mean he's going to enact the war plan, but he wants to have the capability to threaten the United States along with its allies to, in their view, to deter the U.S. from attacking or from responding to a North Korean attack on our allies.
우리 세상 끝까지 이 깃발 따라 한 길 가리라 우리 사랑하는 한국을 사랑하는
The supreme leader of the party, State and Army, Kim Jong-un, chairman of the Workers' Party of Korea, chairman of the State Affairs Commission of the Democratic People's Republic of Korea, and supreme commander of the Korean People's Army, looked round the exhibition venue of tools, finishing building parts and scientific and technological achievements of the Ministry of the People's Armed Forces. Displayed in the exhibition were 131,620 tools and finishing building parts of 550 kinds, and more than 530 materials based on scientific and technological achievements, invented and manufactured and presented by the construction units and building materials producers of the People's Army. Seeing the exhibits, Kim Jong-un said with great satisfaction, "I see greater changes in this exhibition than in the exhibition of tools 2 years ago. It is an unusual scene in the era of prosperity of construction. Great revolution has been brought about in the field of construction. The inventions displayed in the exhibition venue have been made to suit the constitution of the Koreans and conveniently to use. I see many varieties of building materials and furnishings and furniture and fixtures, and their quality is high. It is necessary to wage a vigorous struggle to make the building parts localized, multifarious, diverse, and multicolored as intended by the party. The strength and wisdom of the masses are inexhaustible, and when they are determined, they can make anything. We should not think of purchasing the building equipment and materials from other countries, but make dynamic efforts to invent and manufacture them in our own way. The civilians should also learn after the spirit of struggle and working manner of the service personnel of the People's Army," he stressed. Kim Jong-un said the current exhibition is a very important occasion in further glorifying the great heyday of construction and put forward tasks for the field of construction. He was accompanied by Vice Marshal of the Korean People's Army Hwang Byung-seul, member of the Presidium of the Political Bureau of the Central Committee of the Workers' Party of Korea, Vice Chairman of the State Affairs Commission of the DPRK, and Director of the General Political Bureau of the Korean People's Army, General Park Yong-sik, Minister of the People's Armed Forces of the DPRK, and Lieutenant General Kim Jong-kwan, Vice Minister of the People's Armed Forces.